Hello chat, Dan VR. Today we're going to be going over a quick history of Deepwoken's combat. So the PvP in Deepwoken has gone through multiple different changes throughout the life cycle of this game. Starting off with the release of Deepwoken, it was relatively peaceful. I mean, not many people were ganking. There was simply no need to, We were just figuring out how the game works. Unfortunately, just a few days after release, Agamatsu releases a video essentially turning the game into fucking Chirac on a holiday evening. I mean, there is no fucking chance you could take 2 steps out of Etris without being jumped. And most of us didn't really understand why. I mean, we knew that there was something called luck, and we knew if we killed people, we got it. That was it. We did not realize that there was a level difference. We didn't realize that, if you kill a freshie, you don't get luck. We didn't really realize there was an indicator. So for a good while, you'd go to Arisia, power 2 head ass, and a guild of max levels would just tear you to fucking pieces and then grip you. It got so bad, in fact, that Agamatsu then just 2 days later released a video, almost a guide on how to not get your pockets ran when you play the game. And now at this point, most people were pretty bad at Deepwoken. You didn't see mantra fainting. Hell, you didn't see normal fainting. It was just a weird combination of swinging and rolling and spamming mantras. One distinct difference in the combat back then was the ability to move stack. Now, if you use a mantra and then M1, it will cancel the mantra and you just M1. Back then, if you're mid M1s and then hit a mantra, it would just immediately come out. So you could swing and then cast Astral Wind at the exact same time. And this wasn't just select mantras. This wasn't a bug. That was by design. You could do that with every mantra. This resulted in people more or less getting ABA comboed. Alright, if you got caught by somebody at the wrong time of day, you'd be dead before you even knew what happened. This all came to a head around March. So this move stacking update completely removed that feature. You could no longer just throw out mantras mid M1 combo. This prompted a lot of discourse within the community. Was this a good update? Was move stacking good for the game? Was it a skillful mechanic? Was it something that needed to be removed? And this was such a big topic that there was even a video hosted by Agamatsu featuring some of the biggest creators at the time, sort of giving their 2 cents of what they thought the balancing looked like. If it was, a good idea to get rid of move stacking, if we thought that the devs were good at balancing. It was a really heated debate. And for a long time, it sort of stayed that way. With move stacking gone, PvP was very bare bones. People were starting to figure out, I should feint, I should read people, mantra fainting, but it was still very, very basic. This, however, did sort of change with the discovery of a new move stack variant. With this new version of move stacking, upon flourishing, and keep in mind this is verse 1, so you had the stab flourish, if you land the last M1 to flourish at the same time you used a mantra, they would proc simultaneously. This was most commonly seen with flourish strong left, and it would end up, you'd lose almost 2 bars off a single M1 flourish. It was, it definitely was almost as bad as the original move stacking. Now, when this got removed, not many people complained. I mean, sure, the tryhards were upset, but this was a generally well-accepted change for the game. Now, from this point to verse 2, not very many actual changes came to the dynamics of PvP. However, there were some significant changes to the meta. So for essentially March of 22, all the way up to the release of verse 2 in December, we had what could almost be referred to as the dark days. Not just content-wise, but PvP-wise. So the meta at this time was essentially 600 HP, just a car, max reduction, no attunement, medium. Now, you saw a decent amount of heavy builds, but the main gist of it was no attunement, just a car. This was absolutely miserable to play. coupled with the fact that the old HP kits, the old dupe sets, allowed you to get up to the higher ranges of 600 HP, some builds were almost unkillable. And there's videos out there to show it. I mean, you can see people wailing on them. 16, 17 flourishes, the player is still alive. Running through your entire list of mantras multiple different times and the person is still alive. Now, the only real thing that you had back then to keep this in line was the old progression. The old progression was so inconsistent that you had to be incredibly lucky to get one of these god builds. However, whenever you did get one, you now became a boss rating monster. You're incredibly tanky. If you have any sort of regen, of course, you're going to be unstoppable. There are even minuscule changes. Now, spitting gives you a set percentage of health back. You just get whatever it is, 1 or 2%. I don't know. Back then, the amount of HP you got from spitting actually scaled with your max HP. So someone with 400 HP spitting on you would get less health back than someone with 600 spitting on you. It was damn near impossible to play, especially when these builds had pre-nerf No Life King. It was not really a meta that anyone enjoyed. Literally, no one liked it. Every build was the same. You're no attunement Justicar. You're gonna run No Life King or you're gonna run Obfuscation, and that was it. This was a real dark period for PvP. There wasn't much build variety. There wasn't really anything worth going. Because the meta was so strict, even if you played something fun, or that would be powerful on paper, you were just going to lose. They're just too tanky. This brings us into Verse 2. Verse 2 was supposed to really, save combat. We got venting. We got a small amount of parry changes. It's now more punishing to miss a parry, to prevent the parry trades we saw in Verse 1. We saw all of these different new builds, new oaths, new mantras, all this stuff. It was supposed to make the game better. And that brings us into the current PvP meta, which arguably is worse than Layer 1. It's worse than Verse 1. Move stacking now more or less exists in the form of ABA combos. If you can get somebody with, let's say an uppercut, you could hit them with the dumbest combo you've ever seen. Just for example, I can do Rising Wind. I can hit Astral, M1, so they stay in the air with me. And then I champion Whirl Throw, and then I Radiant Kick. You can almost kill someone completely in one combo before they ever have a chance to respond. And if they don't have their vent, they're just dead. Even if they do have their vent, if you're fast enough to parry it, or you're just slightly out of the seemingly wildly inconsistent hitbox, just nothing happens to you. This has also led to a meta where you are dangerously build carried. Now, back when I spoke about the no attunement meta, sure, it was annoying, but it was a no attunement build, You had your ways to fight it. If you were just better at parrying, if you were just a better player, you could beat them. It would take a while, but you could beat them. With current builds now being, 500 some HP, Arc Warder, Orbital Ice, Flame Wisp, all these different reductions, and these builds still get to do a lot of damage. It's almost unplayable. You can be one of the worst. You could be a very average player, but with the right build now, you could just stomp the majority of players you come across. And it's honestly the PvP now, I would say, as someone who's played from release and whose main focus was always PvP, the current meta is the worst that we have ever had. It is pitiful how many fights you can lose to people who are so clearly worse than you, and they simply just have a better build. It's now incredibly easy to make builds with re-rolling talents, with Shrine of Order. You can now make the perfect build every single time, and that has resulted in one of the most boring, unfair metas we have ever seen.